so poor. But you are not writing academic English. You're writing in a very informal English to tell you that how you feel about this one. This is doctor, is a PhD course. This is not a course for undergraduate. You have to speak the language we speak in this discipline. And after that, you begin to keep silence in the classroom because his English is not good enough. Okay, because he does not use that kind of the language that in this field, in our fields, will be used, right? So, language. Do you think that your English will is better than? Do you think that my spoken language will be better than that of the American students? Not really. Yes or no, right? When I was in the States, that was a long time ago, I checked with my professor, major professor, to see that whether my English is good enough, or because I'm English majors, and I'm the only international student in that English program. We have about 200 PhD students and master students in the university, and I'm the only alien there. And I asked my professor, so you want to compare my English with that of those American or local students. He mentioned one thing. It's very interesting. It might be quite inspiring to you too. He said that, Tommy, I still use my original name. I don't have any kind of English name. Tommy, very close to Tommy, right? Tommy, you will not make the mistakes American students will make. And American students will not make the mistakes that you will make in terms of English. Are you with me? So we make some mistakes that American students will not make, native speaker will not make. But native speaker will make some mistakes that we will never make. That is the way he compared my English with that of the American students. Think about this sentence. Think of this way of expressions. Okay, let's come back. So what kind of language? What matters? Do you think your language matters more than the content, knowledge, or skills you want to train your students for? Or do you think that your content is more important than language? Are you limited by your visions or your understanding about the use of a language? Do you think that you use only very poor English, grammatically incorrect English? Do you think that you're going to misguide your students or mislead your students into the wrong use of the language? Do you think, do you think that you are, poor English will carry wrong message, wrong domain of knowledge for your students? What matters more? Are you more concerned with teach? Are you more concerned with the language, the way how you express? Or are you more concerned with the idea you express? Or when students go back to you for any kind of discussion, are they concerned with the word choice? Or they're concerned more with the thinkings in expressing their ideas for you? What is more important, expression, domain knowledge? Expression is more important or domain knowledge? Those are the issues that you have to face. Because I want to challenge you have to face in any kinds of EMI classes. So my theory comes here. What are the purposes of using English as medium structure? We have a lot of purposes. First one is so-called the integrating language learning with subject learning. I think this is wrong. You teach chemistry. Are you expecting yourself to teach students English? Do you think that teaching English is your concern or not? When students turn in their paper in poor English, do you have any kind of obligation to correct the English, the language, or not? Or just ask them to rewrite? I don't understand your English at all. Or when they speak very poor English, you don't understand them, what will you do? Or when students raise their hand, Professor, I don't understand what you say, what will you do? Okay, so do you think language integrating, that's one of the purpose that most of the administrators emphasize. They want to improve their students in that kind of content course. Integrating language learning with subject learning. I think this is not the first priority anyway. More exposure to English environment, more skill practice opportunity international classroom. I can agree with the last one, international classroom. I don't agree with the first, three ideologies in terms of using English as a medium of instructions. Maybe later we will come back to this part here. So, my idea is that if you want to use English as a medium for instructions, you have to take 4 aspects into your consideration. First one is that you must know what so-called English for academic purpose is. The second one is that language acquisition, whether it should come before you attend the classes, or should come in between your classes. Are you going to acquire the language abilities throughout this kind of course process? Or do you think that you have to master language before you come to the course? Language acquisition might be some kind of policy you have to think about before you implement that kind of policy. Language. If students cannot understand at all, maybe there will be no use of implementing that kind of policy. In other words, I believe this is more important than just language proficiency or English or any kinds of the use of a language. That's the so-called cross-cultural perspectives and interdisciplinary trainings. Don't you have that kind of feelings when you use English to introduce your knowledge, domain knowledge? You're going to bring different kinds of perspective into your discussions of that part. Because our mind, our thinking mode is in different kinds of, how do I say, it is shifting a lot from Chinese to English. So we are going to think differently. We are going to have more diversities in our thinkings, in the way of acquiring the knowledge. Think about, let's take Japanese, for example. You know that in Japanese classroom, when professor uses Japanese to lecture or have some kind of discussion, you can find they will become only lecture-only classroom. What does that mean? It means because in Japanese mode, when students begin to question their professor, they have to use a very in-depth way of doing it, because Japanese carry a lot of etiquettes of addressing their professor in a very polite and humble style. So it's impossible to have a very heated debate in a classroom. But when they change to English mode, this kind of discussion will become so hot. This kind of discussion, this kind of debate, the classroom discussion will become quite different from the Japanese mode. By using different, even in our classroom, when your teacher say, Professor 教授, 老师, 陈老师, 我问你, but in English we say, you. Is that right? And I don't think that this is so and so, right? But the way you say that in Chinese is that, 假如认为这个糟糕, because you dare speak out in a, how do I say, in a bold way, to tell people that you will become more branded, to express your own meanings. And by reorganizing your thinking, especially some of the sentences, the English follow some kind of logical thinking. We always have cause and effect in making your own sentences. But in Chinese, we follow our thinkings in different ways. We just follow, we have this kind of the knowledge flow quite naturally without thinking about our logical thinking. But in English, you must think logically before you make your own sentences. So English, I'm not talking about only the function, this communication function of language. I'm talking about the mentality, the change of mentalities in using the language. So cross-cultural perspective and interdisciplinary trainings, I believe, are more important than just the language proficiency and the language acquisitions in the EMI classroom. In my classroom, I just have a very short reviews of English, using English language of instructions. They are in Taiwan. They are about, even in Singapore, in Hong Kong, there are about 4 types. The first one, English native speaker for EFL students, non-English native speakers for EFL students, English native speaker for mixed group, that's EFL students and English native speakers, and non-English native speaker for mixed group. In Taiwan, the bottom one might be the higher possibility for the classroom scenario. Is that right? You have non-English, we are non-English native speakers for mixed group. Sometimes you have students from different countries, right? And it doesn't mean that your student from different countries can speak very good English. Some of the students from Vietnam, from Mongolians, and the countries, the English is not good, the Chinese is not good, so what can you do with that? Non-English native speaker for mixed group, okay? Focus of instructions. The content you have to follow. Those are the focuses. 3 focuses you have to, to pay more attention to your instruction. The content of instruction align with the process of instructions, and then professional knowledge transmission, language awareness. Of course, this sometimes is much easier for the students, for the language, for the happenings of language awareness within the English departments, but outside the English department, there will be a lot of difficulties there, right? So, hindrance or better understanding. Do you think that language will become a hindrance to understanding, or do you think that language will become a tool for better understanding? Sometimes, I believe, when you speak English or use English, you will have a better understanding. Students will have a better understanding, or you have a better way of explaining your idea to your student. Do you know why? Give me one example. You want to explain, for instance, I don't know nothing about too much about the natural science or engineering, but how about management? When you use Chinese to teach, for instance, in some of the cases of HR, human resource management, you have to use a lot of models. You have to use a lot of terminology in Chinese. But that kind of translation sometimes befuddle the students' understanding of the terms. Is that right? For instance, you say 蓝海策略, you say 地球是世界是平的. But in English, it's quite easy, is that right? Because that kind of image is very vivid. Then just you translate everything into Chinese. So think of the other way, just not to pull it, just to push it. To use the language, to use the English language, you might have the better understanding, or you might have a better instructions for your students instead of translating everything, because most of knowledge is in English, into Chinese. That's one of the ways to convince you of using English as a medium of instructions. So, focus. How about students? We talk about the teachers' focus. How about students' focus? Focus on learning. There will be language learning, because most of students have some kind of anxiety about their language. First one is the language learning. My English is not good enough. The second one is the content learning, whether I could miss other important parts. The reason, that might miss somehow important parts. But then if they have a good preparation or they're well prepared before they come to the classroom, they might not miss a lot of things. And most of our lectures will go with PowerPoint, this kind of PPT file, so they will catch some ideas there. Do you know why I just when I did teach my undergraduate class in English, based upon the fact that about the first few years when I came back from the States, I began to teach the English literature at the National Science University. Of course, all my lectures were in English, and we talk about the Romantic literature. And whenever I taught, especially in the first month, whenever I speak I use English as an instructional mediums in the class. I happen to find that in front of me, there are dozen, maybe 2 dozen of tape recorders all putting over there. They put all the tape recorders there. Record everything I say, and then go back to take my notes, because I try to speak very fast. And about 2 months later, several students, after the midterm, several students come to me and say, Professor, would you please speak in Chinese? Because poetry, romantic poetry, is so difficult. How can we just understand everything in English? Do you think that literature teaching is more important, or our listening practice, listening comprehension is more important? I said, okay, it's up to you. That's your choice. That's not my choice. So they have that kind of anxieties. Besides the peer competition, just to mention in that American popular novels class, that one American student dominates the whole class. The other students feel so weak, inferior in front of the American students. They could not talk at all. Even right now in my European literature class, these 2 charming Argentina's female students talk a lot. They join a lot, join the discussion a lot. The other students, were so silent most of the time. So this kind of peer competition will happen. Especially, it will be on the favorite side of the student who have very good commands of English. And maybe they just know some of the American students who have no ideas, who have nothing at all, but they speak English. So they just speak out a lot and dominate the whole class with nonsense and ask stupid questions all the time, right? So that kind of peer competition, of course, happens all the time. So classroom anxiety. So how are you going to manage that kind of anxiety, either for students or for the faculty member? I think there will be several ways of doing that. You manage your English classroom. You must know that you give some kind of, it's easier for you to give lectures, is that right? You can write down everything, you can follow your slides, to have some kind of talk, but it's more difficult for you to have some discussions, because classroom is dynamic. It's impossible to follow some of the rule unless you stop your students from asking any kind of questions at all. I say, no question, this class. Or you speak very fast, or you use them all the time without allowing any people to ask any kind of questions. That'll be fine, it's impossible, right? Classroom is so dynamic. So this kind will be quite easy. Now when you are communicating, you are not having any kind of conversation. The difference between communication and conversation is that communication, you must have something to say. Right? Conversation, you have nothing to say, just have what? Free talk. Just ease your anxiety all the time. So when you have something to say, you don't have to worry about your language. Another second one is that this is a language transmission. It's not a language practice. Do you think that's okay for you, like when you speak, to say, Taiwanese students are so anxious about their grammar. They say, for instance, from the elementary school, you have to say, I'm happy, you are happy, she's happy, everyone's happy. You have to use the first person, second person, the be. Verb to be will be different, is that right? First person, am. Second person, are. Third person, is. Plural will be are. So you have to learn everything before you open your mouth to talk. Southeastern, the people from Bangkok, the street, those little boys from on the street, they speak very good. They speak English, not very good, but they can understand. You can understand. They say, "I'm happy, you happy, everyone happy." No verb at all. But can you understand what he said? Sure. In Taiwan, we are more conscious of our diction, our grammar. When the correctness is more important, or fluency is more important. Do you have to speak correct English, or do you have to speak fluent English? Do we make mistakes in grammar? We do. Do Americans make mistakes in grammar? They do. They make a lot of mistakes even the President of the United States makes some mistakes in their grammar, even in their pronunciation. But they are frightened by that kind of what? Native speakers. Oh, they speak. A lot of native speakers speak poor English. They make mistakes. They don't know they are making mistakes because they are so proud of being the arrogant native speaker who claim that they dominate the English. Now, English is a tool not for the communication between native speaker and non-native speaker. English becomes international language, which is the medium of communication between all the people around the world, including native speaker, non-native speaker, non-native speaker, and non-native speaker. Once you can communicate with Japanese in English, your English is perfect. If you can't, your English is not. Are you with me? Do you think that those Indian people can speak very fast? They speak English very fast. Is that right? Do you think that all the native can understand? Or even, one time I went to Malaysia to have an international conference. We have a lot of people, it's Indian, Malay, and American, and British people, and British scholars, and me, and Singapore, we all sit together. And the Indians, were so proud and making a lot of speeches and try to, show off of some of his contributions, scholarly contributions. They talk a lot, and I missed some of the part because I was reluctant to listen to him, so I was burying myself in my food. And later I asked the American professor, said, what did he say? He said, I didn't understand. I would guess that, some of the American people, some of my friends have told me that, who amongst the Asians speak the best English? Taiwanese. Yeah. They say, you are any American, they say, Taiwanese speak better English than other Asian people. You listen to Singapore sing English. Don't worry, I'm happy. And Indian, they speak very fast without any kind of distinction between and without any kind of vowels. It's terrible. We Chinese people, we Taiwanese people speak much better English than most of the Asian people. The problem is that we don't speak. That's the problem, right? Okay, another one is now this is not the language practice. Another one is the global context. This is very important. When you teach, use English as a medium of instruction, you must bring the global context into your class. It's not the translation, not translating everything from Chinese into English. You bring different kinds of perspectives, bring the global perspective into your disciplines to tell that the different kinds of ways of looking into your own knowledge of disciplines. It's not just pure, shifting of your language modes. And then to change students to think critically and analytical in English, I'm not talking about correct English. I'm talking about the way how you think in English, critically and analytically. So develop skill in problem solving, critical thinking, and it's critical thinking, and yes, two things. And global life, your specialty, means that you always ask a student to think in English mode. How are you going to do that? Even though they miss some verbs, they miss some plural forms. They don't use an for orange. They use orange. It's okay, right? It's still orange, is that right? And orange, what's the difference of using orange and on orange? It's still orange, is that right? Elephant, what's it? Elephant or an elephant, still elephant. It's not monkey at all, right? So why do you have to care about your articles? Why do you have to care about, English is a stupid language. I asked another professor, he said, when I say I go to the movies last night, do I have to say I went to it? Last night indicate that it's a past tense. But what do I have to use I go to? You have redundancy in using the past tense by changing the verb go into went. Is that right? It's redundant. Why do I have to put S? My mother likes orange. Likes. When I say my mother like an orange, do you think they are going to misunderstand her? No, he still likes an orange, right? Like, like and likes doesn't matter at all. The only grammar we have to know is what? It's the grammar which will change your meaning. Is that right? The big hindrance to non-native speaker is what? Two things. One is the personal pronoun, the other is the tense. Because sometimes we misuse the he and the she. That's the big problem, right? Because when you say he, and then you say Mary, so and so, and you change it to she, he, and her, and he. And this is we have misunderstanding of why. Do you think the Mary just changed her sex or what? But anyway, how about the past tense? You say that I was, I went to, I did something. If you are so afraid of using the wrong tense, why don't you use 8 times of adverbs all the time? You don't have to worry about the verb tense. You just use the time of the adverbs all the time when you communicate with other people. Yesterday, tomorrow, I go to movies tomorrow. I go to many movies. You don't use, if you don't use, I will go to the movies tomorrow. I'm going to the movies tomorrow. So, but you add tomorrow, people understand that you hasn't been to the movies. You will go to the movies tomorrow. Is that right? So always the time, there are kind of things is more important than just developing the skill. But the way how you think is more important than just paying more attention to your grammar. The thing, use the language to think. How am I going to practice that? How to manage that? Okay, first one, you have to interpret your knowledge and language. And you have to, this is a very tricky way. Try to, in language classes, in this kind of English talk programs, it's better to use so-called student-centered learning. You don't talk too much. The problem with most of the professors who like to use English is that you prepare a lot of PowerPoint. You use them all the time and ask your students to listen to you, and you just go through slide by slides, and then that's it. To be honest with you, your students, they will get distracted. They will not listen. They will shut. They broke their mind within 3 minutes. Listening to English is so exhausting mentally and physically, like you are doing right now, right? How long can you sustain yourself for understanding when you listen to English? I'm testing your patience today. You must tell some jokes in order to waken up people, right? So the problem is that if you don't talk joke, if you talk about that's engineering, that's a science, it's a boring stuff. So how can you tell jokes? Or even sometimes you have lame jokes, right? People don't laugh at all. So you have to have a student-centered learning. What I mean is student-centered is that sometimes you organize small groups. Ask them to have some discussion, of course in English. There's some kind of discussion there. And then come up here to present their ideas, to share with you the idea. Or even you ask them to read, if you have textbook, or you have some kind of slides, ask them to read for you. Hey, Jenny, would you please read for me? And I can stop here and you ask them to read English, or what do you think about this one, and how about the other one? So try to encourage students to lead some kind of discussions. Student-led or centered learning will be more important than this kind of English talk program. It's a good practice for you and for your students too. And by using this kind of student-led discussions, your classroom will become more active, more energetic, and you will know what they think. It doesn't matter they use poor English, or even they can understand, you can ask them to come up here and write down on the blackboards. Is that right? Or you can share first. If they are reluctant or they are so shy talking in front of a whole class, you can ask the small group, these 3 people, they work together, they have some discussion. You come up here to listen to them, whether they speak English or Mandarin. And then after the discussion, they will ask one of the students who can speak good English to come over to talk to you. That would be one of very good strategy to manage your classroom, right? Students have no interference with their presentation expression. Don't try to stop them. Try to help them. Yes, that's right. That's very good. How about, and if they can continue, just try to add some sentence, add some verbs to help them. No interference. Oh, you are wrong. Don't say you are wrong, or you don't stop them. Just help them. Yes. And how about the others? And you try to help them with some good sentences. Give them some verbs. Give them some sentences. Do you mean so and so and so and so? You can say that. Oh, do you mean this? And do you mean that this is kind of after effect or so and so and so? Is that right? And that would be a good one. Control your language. Okay, another one is control your EAP. Use EAP and global English. In presenting, lecturing, try to use EAP, so English for academic purposes. Means you are strict. You don't use a common or colloquial expressions or any kinds of expression in daily life. Use academic English. Even you can read some papers or the way how you present your paper in any kind of international conference. And then in discussion or in classroom management, use the global English. What I mean by global English? Global English means a very simplified English without American or British heritage. Use the English people can understand. You know how many words for global English? 1,500 words. Only 150 words that you can apply to your discussion. Most of students, don't underestimate your students' in language proficiency. They have learned English for at least 10 years. So don't teach them English. Ask them to use English. You know, the English, the problem, they have no problem with the English. They have a problem with the use of the language. They don't use, they just learn. That's the big problem. So in this kind of class, you have to encourage them to what? You control your language. Try to make your English understood easily for them by using simplify the vocabulary, sentence pattern. I always, I like to, because most of the students are English majors and professors. If you are talking to some English majors, try to use a simple sentence instead of complex or compound sentences. Don't use which, that, don't use participle, present participle, don't use subjunctive mood, don't use that. Don't use that kind of, forget about your grammar, okay? Just remember only one thing, subject, verb, and object, that's enough. If you want to speak perfect English, you have to be more careful with what? Adverbs and adjective. Good speaker, if you listen to some of TED Talks, you know TED Talks? Those TED talkers are very good at using verbs and adverbs. They have to use simultaneously, eventually, inevitably, perfectly. They have to use those adverbs. If you use more adverbs, you will enhance the quality of English. So when you do that in international conference, try to do that. And how many adverbs can you use? Most of the time you use about 10 to 12 adverbs. That will be impress people with your beautiful English. Adverbs, especially multi-syllabized adverbs. Eventually, inevitably, frequently. Don't say often, say frequently. Don't say at the same time, say simultaneously. Okay, to impress people. Okay. Okay, another one, control your language. So you have to control your language. Practice yourself. Do I practice English to myself? Of course. Your English ability, proficiency will be declining after about 6 months. So every time, if you got the time, you can go back to the States every 6 months. Just allow your professor to go back to the United States, to the native speaking countries, every 6 months, and you have to keep the proficiency of your language. But if your language proficiency will be declining after 6 months, how are you going to keep that kind of proficiency? You have to practice. Practice by what? Nobody will practice English to you. Is that right? Oh yes, there's the best person who will practice English with you all the time. That's yourself. So I've been doing this. I still have that kind of very terrible habits of talking to myself for the last 25 years. No, it's more than that. I'm sorry to tell you, I'm older than that. Starting when I was the freshman in college, I started to talk to myself when I was the first freshman in college until now. I'm still talking to myself in English all the time. For instance, you say, I wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I rush to the bathroom, I begin to do something, right? And then I just go back to the kitchen to prepare the breakfast for myself, and I cook so and so and so. So I always talk to myself all the time, really. And you can do that, even in classroom. Before I come here, do I talk to myself about this one? Yes, I did. I did that last night. So that's the way how I can speak a little bit faster with, how to say, fluent English, with ideas in my mind. I try to change my, so before I came over here, I turn on radio to English mode, try to expose myself or immerse myself into English environments. So when I arrive here, my mind is all English. And I can easily change myself into English mode, talking to you fluently. Okay? So you have to control your language, not kind of language, but the kind of language you can do that. Another one is develop student confidence, or your own. Right? You have to develop your confidence too. And how about your own? You have to try to, don't be afraid of speaking English in public. Nobody cares about whether you make mistakes or not, okay? Yes, you do care because I'm an English teacher. That's the problem with English teaching. English teachers always speak perfect English, right? That's why, whenever I'm invited to, I'm sorry, what's wrong with that? Whenever I'm invited to this kind of, conference or workshop, I don't have to speak English because most of the teachers, especially English teachers, want to test my English proficiency to see that. And I cannot make any kind of mistake. Do I make mistakes? Sure, I make mistakes. I make errors in grammar. Sometimes I pick a wrong diction. So I try not to. But anyway, I still have that kind of problems there. But don't worry, I don't worry about that. I got a lot of opportunities to present myself in several international conferences and in several occasions, and that helped to establish my confidence. And you can set up your own confidence too. Don't worry. So later I'm going to ask any one of all of you to ask me any kind of question in English, right? Especially in speak English in front of your vice president to see. That's the kind of confidence that you can develop for yourself, right? How about your students? Students, always tell them that the English is good, right? Your English is good too. Tell yourself your English is good, tell students your English is good, and maybe, perhaps, your English will become good, better. Right? You always say that, my English poor. This kind of hint, mentoring hint, will make your English worse, will ruin your English professors. Okay. 2 cases. Netherlands and Hong Kong. There are a lot of debates about using English, whether English is a good choice as a kind of medium for classroom or instructions. In Netherlands, they have the debates on use of English, and some region which are opposed to that kind of use of language are as follows. They say that language performance over specialty, and sometimes the language will be better than just go over the specialty, and there will be some identity problems if our students speak too much of English. Maybe they don't know that they are Dutch, right? They have some problems in their national identity, and then cultural hegemony. The English